Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, our Premier Solutions Engineer. Today, Dion is going to be going over the replacement for the tabbed UI control using a UX, and I know it's a subject that a lot of you are very interested in. So let's get started. Of course, Dion's also here to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type those questions into the GoToWebinar control panel. So Dion, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
There we go. Hopefully that's coming through okay.
It hasn't yet, but it may in a moment, or it may for other people, and I might be slow.
I noticed your video was on, so it may be taking up bandwidth on your side. So FYI.
Yeah, the video's off, and now I can see your screen, so we're good.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And again, thank you everybody for taking time. But then again, I know you're all forced to stay home, so you have no excuse not to be here. So, so I don't feel that great about your
attendance. Yeah.
Exactly. And I want to say, I apologize last week for all the audio shenanigans. Hopefully we'll have a little more stable setup today and the audio won't be destroyed, but we'll know in a little bit as we go into it. So anyway, rebooted everything, retied all the cables down, connected everything else. So praying to the audio gods. So should be good today. So again, thank you everybody for taking the time to visit with us. Again, this is about your questions, and really what's cool is this series has been based on a lot of questions we got about the tabbed UI, and I've got a whole bunch of lists of them. We'll be going through those. Some we'll catch today, next week for the other ones, but really wanted to appreciate everybody in the community for getting that information to me so that we can, do two things. One is come back with information, hopefully that's helpful, but also it's driving the development aspect. So we've got a couple features that are coming, I'll mention a little bit later, that are going to make life easier and make it essentially able to do everything you need to do from that standpoint. As Dave mentioned, you can go to the GoToWebinar questions area and put your questions in there, both on this topic and any other topics. We'll try to cover it. I actually have another question that someone sent in that I'll be covering a little bit later on this, just kind of a how to do something. But first and foremost, I want to just remind everybody that coming up at the end or towards the October timeframe, October 7th through 9th, we have our Alpha DEFCON 2020. If you haven't signed up, please go online, sign up. We're going to be doing a lot of training. There's a lot of new features and capabilities that are going to arrive later this year, and we're going to do some focused work on that. And we're really looking forward to having everybody with us at this event. So again, you can go to alphasoftware.com/DEFCON 2020. And also another thing, and it's showing right here, very cool, and Dave can talk to it a few minutes ago, but Alpha released a COVID-19 risk assessment app with a medical doctor in supervision. And it came together very, very quickly. It was really a great showcase on what you can do with low code in a very short period of time. But it's really neat, and you could try it by just going onto our website and hit the try it now, and it'll bring it down. Dave, any comments on that? I mean, it's really cool, and it came together so quickly.
It did. We got it together in a few days, although there was some testing and so on, and it's being used by thousands of people, actually. They talked about it on Bloomberg Radio News. It was in the Boston Globe. It was the front page of the Irish Times, so we're pretty happy how that turned out. It's a risk assessment, and it's also partially a diagnostic tool. It says it's not, but if you enter in symptoms, it can tell you what you might likely have or not have with related to COVID. And it is updated practically daily because everything we know about COVID seems to change quickly in terms of what symptoms are happening and maybe what you should do and so on. But we built it using Alpha Anywhere and the list control. And we're actually going to do a webinar about this. I'm going to say in about 3 or 4 weeks, maybe sooner, in which we show you how we put together this application, because it's got a couple of cool tricks behind the scenes, which I think you'll enjoy seeing. You can also go right to the app. It's at mycovid19risk.com. It's hosted at Alpha Cloud. COVID-19 risk, sorry, mycovid19risk.com. And if all goes well, it should just pop right up there. And you happen to be looking at a UX control. It's downloads once. No data is actually sent back. It's completely anonymous, so we don't actually we are not storing the data. It's only kept on the phone, but it's still a pretty useful tool. So hey, thanks for the plug there, Dion.
Yeah, and also thank you to Warren J. Wexelman,
This
MD.
was his
Making
brainchild. This was
that.
something that he really wanted. A lot of people, he's based in Brooklyn, New York, which is the epicenter right now, and he had lots of people calling him up, and he wanted to sort of assure people that, as he said, enlighten, not frighten, to go through there and give you the best advice that he can regarding the virus. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and very cool. And again, it's really a great example of how low code can have a dramatic impact. And there's so much energy. I keep reading article after article, and Alpha has such a great tool set to build very rich apps, not just simple form-based apps, along with transform and other things. So it's really a cool example and really good. And by the way, there were 200,330 revisions of this app before it was released at the A level. You can see down here. So you can see the team did a lot of work in 3 days. It was pretty incredible. I mean, geez Louise.
it's been very stable since the 15th,
Yeah.
although we update the rules behind the scenes. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have an AI that helps us out, and it's very,
Yeah.
very quick at doing stuff on that. So that, and also, guess what? We have a special guest next week, which is another individual, which we're very excited about. Dave, I don't want to give away the store, but give them an idea of what they're going to
Not
see
at
next
all.
week.
We're going to be doing so. Part of next week's webinar will be with a gentleman named Jaco Brooks, who is who's been a longtime Alpha user, and uses Alpha in Australia to keep track of rugby teams. So he keeps track of leagues and which players get traded to which leagues and which games they've participated in. And it actually turned out to be extremely useful when some of the players started to come down with COVID-19. We ended up building I'm sorry, it was South Africa. He ended up building a contact tracing app using that very same data. So which was very useful to say, hey, this player tested positive and you played 2 games with him while he was possibly risky, and it just lets you know to take care. So he actually got a lot of press on that one too, but he's going to show you how he put that together. He's also going to show you also about the rugby team application, which is really cool. It's got some great dashboarding stuff happening behind the scenes. He's used Bootstrap. It looks really nice. And it's been a ongoing product for him for years now. So I think that'll be quite exciting as a showcase piece.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got lots of really great stuff percolating. I mean, let's call it a little silver lining on the COVID is that it's driving a lot of innovation. It's also showing the needs for people to be able to react quickly. I mean, if you looked at a traditional development environment, you're talking weeks to put this thing together versus like 3 days with the functional capability and more importantly, the ability to quickly revise it. Warren is, or Dr. Wexelman, excuse me, has been working heavily with the team to kind of continually enhance it, update it so that it's accurate. As Dave mentioned, it's not a sitting duck, meaning the COVID thing is moving, it's modifying, they're learning more about it every day. So you need a platform to do that stuff. And we're very excited about being able to support Dr. Wexelman and also just kind of show off what we can do with this technology. Pretty cool stuff. So thank you, Dave. I really appreciate all the updates and definitely join us next week. You're really going to enjoy the rugby app. People who play rugby are insane and, but we won't talk about that. Nobody needs to be making
Contact
comments during
sport
this.
needs contact tracing, I think should be their motto. That's just came up with that. They can add that for free.
Yeah, it does remind me. I went to just really quick aside, but I went to UC Santa Barbara,
Yeah.
and they would have every year the annual rugby tournament, and so you'd have people from South Africa, Australia, Europe. Those people were crazy, man. It was just off. It was a really fun weekend, but you had to kind of keep your toes because things got out of hand pretty quickly at certain points in time. So you had to kind of, be wary. It's fun, playing with the tiger. So pretty good. So today, what we want to do is continue to focus on different UIs, and most importantly, we want to talk about the tab UI replacement. And I want to talk a little bit, so the first part of this is going to be a little bit of recap because I want to bring everybody up to speed on the tabbed UI and the tabbed UI replacement. And then what we're going to do is start diving into some of the questions and other things that have come up, plus also talk about some really cool new features that are actually coming out very soon in the pre-release to help improve the ability to replace the tabbed UI. So before I start, I want to talk about, what was the tabbed UI? And I know a lot of people are familiar, but for people who haven't seen this before, the tabbed UI was a very powerful way to quickly take pieces and components of your system, grids, A5W pages, reports, you name them, and tie them together into essentially a dashboard with a menu system with a multi-pane tabbed interface, and it included integrated security. So it was really popular. It's still very popular. I mean, it's a really go-to if you're just starting out. This is a quick way to kind of glue all your pieces together so you don't have to spend a lot of time doing that dashboard kind of stuff. Now, I'm not mentioning like charts and other stuff. I'm talking more of I've got a menu and then I've got some functions and I want to display them. So it's really popular. And so the beauty of it was a couple ways here. First and foremost, it was very easy to set up. It was a component that you could go in and click, 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 configure, and have a dashboard up and running because a lot of it was built in. It also had a fairly flexible structure in terms of the kind of components you could bring in and put together and bring into it. You could bring in reports, A5W pages, you could drive things by arguments, you could change your menu structure. So there was a lot of really flexibility built into it, but it was to a large degree a fixed structure. And most importantly, it was fast to deploy. Boom, within a minute, so you could have your pieces pulled together, publish a page, and have a dashboard up and running. Then you could work from there. So those were some of the pros of the tabbed UI, and thus it was very, very popular and used a lot. There are some cons to it, though. The tabbed UI is not a responsive control. It was built for the desktop web. It was not meant to be used on phones or tablets. So therefore, it is sort of responsive. I mean, it will kind of scale a little bit, but the problem is at a certain point, it just breaks down and it's just not going to look good and it's just not going to work well on the smaller form factors. So that was one of the key cons for a tabbed UI. The other is that it was a heavy component. It actually had a lot in it. So it took a little while to load up. When you start loading up all these other UXs and things like that into it, it started to get pretty heavy in terms of what was on the device and stuff there. And so you didn't have much control, or you had limited control over that. So it tended to be not as the highest performance thing in the world. But most importantly, I think we got the number one thing is that it had very limited styling flexibility. You really couldn't reconstruct it to make it look like more of a modern dashboard app. So that was like a con. You could kind of do hacks and other things, but by the time you did all that, you were like, well, you know, why not just use it right out of the gate using the regular stuff? And there's been some enhancements that have occurred. So for instance, we've enhanced the ability to, you know, create an expanding menu instead of the traditional icon menu. So that updated it. So it's been kind of like tweaked over time, but still it's limited. So what we want to do today is first is I want to go through the demonstration of rebuilding a tabbed UI replacement on that. So, and then we're going to talk about that. This is going to happen this week. We're also going to talk about certain capabilities that were needed to actually make this thing happen and to make it a full tabbed UI replacement. The other is that we're going to talk about integrated security, but that's going to be next week. And I've got a demonstration put together. I'm making some tweaks, but I'm going to show how you can basically reintegrate Alpha security system into it, so you can have a single component. You don't have to have multiple components to pull off security. There's actually two ways to show how to handle it, and I'll do that. And along the way, there are other topics and techniques and questions people have asked. Obviously, we hope you will ask questions and go through go through the GoToWebinar question area and ask us those questions so we can tune it up and prepare other stuff to really allow you to completely flesh out your understanding, your knowledge, and your capability to do a tabbed UI replacement. Now, very important, there are some really cool new features coming to support some of the requests that have already been made and some new ones that are coming there. So we'll talk about through that. So there are certain capabilities, there's certain things you can still do in the tabbed UI that are a little harder or even harder, not really known how to do. We're going to solve all that over the next couple weeks. So stick with us. We'll keep you posted, and we'll have that coming in the pre-release. It's really good. The development team is very interested in helping us kind of flesh out the tabbed UI replacement so that we can really drive knowledge in that area there. So let me go ahead and go back into my development environment. And I'm going to go ahead and go into my development system. And I'm going to start, and I'm going to go through, this will only take about 10 minutes, but I want to show you how you can build a very quick and dirty tabbed UI replacement, but actually one that has a huge amount of advantages in terms of styling and other capability. And the other thing about it is it uses a lot of really different techniques, different components to pull this together. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to build the tabbed UI on the UX component. So we have in here, you'll notice we have the tabbed UI builder, which is a meta component already built into it. But in our case, we're going to start with a plain UX and put that together. And again, There's no template for it, although we're looking at adding possibly a tabbed UI template once we get through all these different pieces. So you can kind of use that as a go-to starting point from there. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to set up our structure. And a tabbed UI has basically a top area, a menu area, and then a content area. So we're just going to use our panel technology to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and put in first and foremost a panel layout. And I'm going to go ahead and put 2 panel cards inside there. So my first panel card and my second panel card. And I'm just going to go ahead and go up to the top. I like to do this. I'm going to go PL, so tabbed UI. So I like to name all of my layouts and cards. Now, you'll notice that it's a left to right metaphor. So we're doing a left to right. So I'm going to go in here to panel card 1, and I'm going to call this PC menu. And then I'm going to go to panel card 2, and I'm going to call that PC content. And the intent for that is that I want to be able to have a menu on the left side of the screen and content on the left. So we're going to save this, and we'll go tabbed UI, webinar. I'm getting smart. I'm doing this stuff ahead of time, so it won't blow up all the time. Now, notice I have integrated security in here because we're going to demonstrate that next week, but I'm just going to say always allowed for now, just for our demonstration purposes here. So we have our pieces here. So again, the idea is we have a left panel and then a content panel, and then an area up at the top. So let's first start with our menu and our content area. So you'll notice that we're using a panel layout. That means both of these cards are going to be displayed at the same time. So I'm going to go here, and you'll notice the flow direction is left to right. So when the cards are displayed, the first one comes on the left side of the screen, next on the right. So that's great. That's exactly what I want. Now, if I go ahead and demonstrate this, you would see that the cards would take up equidistance space. So it would take up, this card would be 50% and this card would be the other 50%. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to go over here to the right-hand side to the panel card properties, and I'm going to go to the layout size. And this is where I can dictate how wide this should be. So I'm going to go in here and say, let's just make this 15%. So that means this card is going to take 15% of the left-hand side of the screen. And then this card, since I don't have, you'll notice when I click on it, there's no layout size. It's basically going to expand to sort of consume the rest of the space that's available, which is the behavior I want. And you'll see this is responsive. So depending on the screen size, it handles that for me. So now I'm going to go back to my PC menu. Let's go into my content just to put in a piece of static text, and we'll go content, although you don't really need that. And then I'm also going to go here, and I'm going to start building my menu on the left. Well, the cool thing about it is that, and this is relatively new within the last year or so, is we have under data controls more, we have the expanding menu, and that's going to be your heart of your menu system. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and I'll go main menu, and I'm just calling this main menu. So this will be this side here. Now, when I insert it, it puts in a certain height and width. But what I really want to do is consume that whole menu area. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the main menu, go over here to fill container and fill it. So now what's going to happen is that it's going to consume that area. So no matter, and again, that's part of the responsive concept, that if you're on horizontal, vertical, or portrait versus landscape, smaller versus this, the system will kind of squeeze things in and out to make it look great. So now I'm going to go into my main menu. And I've got my menu Genie. The first thing I want to do is I want to change my color. It uses this regular color. I'm just going to change the color to something that's a little bit more of a blue color. And we'll grab a blue color. Let's say a little lighter. There we go. But now what I can do is build my menu data Genie. And so I'm going to build my menu. And actually, before I go into that, this is super important. The menu on the left here can use a couple different ways to build it. You can use Genie or JSON. And more importantly, and we've talked about this before, the menu can be driven from a database. So the really cool thing about that is that I'm going to hard code this menu, but there's no reason to have to do that. You could literally have that menu be different for every person or situation, which is really powerful. And that's something you really couldn't do with the tabbed UI. It was pretty much a fixed menu structure. You could show and hide stuff, but you really couldn't on the fly. I mean, literally this menu could have whole different meaning based on what you want to do. So I'm going to use the Genie, And I'm going to use the menu data Genie to start it. I'll go, home, let's say function 1 and function 2. And there's a lot of flexibility. I can go into this. I can set a icon for this, so we'll have a nice icon in our menu. So we'll go here. I'm putting in an SVG. And I can then go into function 1. We'll go ahead and grab another item here. And we'll just grab something. Say it's a shopping cart. And then let's say, since everything is delivered to home now, we can also say, let's say this is an online shopping app. We have our delivery information that's going to be showing where your truck is, etc. So I can go in there. Now, also, if I have security enabled, I can click on here and I can use the security groups to determine who gets to use this menu. So you can kind of use two different methods. You can either load your tabbed UI menu through a database call and through purely on the fly. So you can say, oh, it's this person, these are the items. Or you could pre-build your menu like I'm doing now and use the ability to show and hide based upon users. So you can say the whole administration stuff, unless you're an administrator, you can't actually use that. Now, the other thing you can do is there are server-side and client-side show hide expressions. So you can even take it to the next level where you can say, well, it's an administrator, but I only want the administrator to see these menus with this particular situation. And you can determine that on the server side, like looking at session variables, things like that. Or you can go to the client side and do it on the client side, which is really cool because that means if people are manipulating things on their web browser, it'll instantaneously update the menu to reflect that information. It's really up to you how you want to do it. So security group is really nice because you kind of lock them out based on if they're not an administrator, they can't even see this. And then you can use other techniques from there. Okay. And I can go in and modify some other stuff in terms of the coloring, the indentation, all these kind of things, including what the icons are, etc. So let's go ahead and save this. And let's take a look at see what it looks like so far. So you'll see we have our left menu side here, and you'll notice it's consumed the whole area here. Then we have our content area on the right, and that's available from there. So you can see what that is. Now, I want to go back. You'll notice this is kind of big. So what I'm currently using is I'm using a built-in alpha style. I would maybe change the coloring of the text, maybe to be white. So I can go into there and I can go in here and I can go text color type. Well, you know what? Let's change that to custom. And let's go ahead and make that white. So it's white. And then the other thing I want to do is, since I'm going to be using more on desktop, I'm going to go to properties. And currently I'm using this style here, but I want to go ahead and use a compact theme. And again, you can use the style builder to modify colors, tweak fonts, everything else, and make it look a little nicer. So now you'll see we have a little bit nicer. We have a smaller, everything's smaller because I went there. But you notice, oh, you know what? I've got kind of a wide area here. So let's go back into this. We'll go to the PC menu, and I'm just going to make that 10%. That's probably sufficient for that. And by the way, I could use a number of pixels if I knew the pixels. It's really up to you on what, but the pixels won't make it dynamic. So if you wanted to expand and contract, and that may be a situation you may not want to, but you can see it's pretty good. Now these menus don't do anything, and you'll notice we're also missing the top area. So we'll come back to this in a moment, but let's go ahead and focus on this top area. So in the tabbed UI, you have a top area that gives you basically your icons, your titles, etc. And it also gives you the ability to have like other content up there, like a login button, etc. So let's go into design. And I really should have done this. Just quick process check. Dave, everything coming through okay?
Yeah, loud and clear. Thanks. Yep.
Oh, good. Thank goodness. So there. So the cool thing about the panel layout is that I can do what's called a panel header and put a header. So it's always going to be at the top. And I can say, oh, you know what? I am going to use a control bar. Now, I don't have to. I could put in my individual controls, but the control bar is the way to go because it makes it much simpler to manage. It's far more powerful. And there's some really cool features we'll cover in the next few minutes on that. So I'm going to go ahead and click yes, because I want to have a control bar up there. So now I have my control bar at the very top of my area. I'm going to have a header area, and I can use that control bar now to display the data in there. So I'm going to just put in a couple quick things to kind of show you the basics. So the traditional is you have an icon on the left, sort of the icon for the company or the application. You have some text, and then you have like a profile menu over on the right-hand side of your screen for doing profile work. So I'm going to click here and add a control item. And I'm going to go and I'm going to say HTML logo. So the first thing I'm going to do is do an HTML for the logo. Now remember what items are, think of them as little components that are going to be part of the control bar. So we go through and develop those little items first, then we lay them out on the control bar where we want to see. And the really neat thing about the control bar, you'll find out down the road, or if you ever used it, is that it's very dynamic. You can show and hide, you can change text, you can do all these things to make it a very sort of dynamic and aware component. So I'm going to go ahead and say that, and it's going to be HTML. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to go HTML title. Now I could put both of them in there, but I'm just putting them there. And then I want to do one other one here, which is a fairly new component called our button draft. So I'm going to go button DDM. Let's see, BTN DDM, and I'm going to call that profile. So this is where our profile menu is. So I've kind of created my containers, but I need to tell what's in there. So for the logo, well, let's do the title first. I'm going to go to the title, and I'm just going to put in here Alpha Sports. I've been using that a lot, so we'll just say Alpha Sports. And we'll call it dashboard. Now, as I mentioned, if I had data elements, I could make this dynamic, which is kind of cool. It could actually literally read the title out of a database. Very hard to do something like that on a tabbed UI. Again, this really has so much more flexibility in terms of the behaviors than the tabbed UI does. So these are some of the great advantages. Now on the logo, I'm just going to go in here. I'm going to go into HTML text. And again, I could put a logo, but you notice I can insert an image in here. So it's called HTML, but I'm going to insert an image. I could do my SVG icon, but I actually have an image in my web project style. And I'm going to select it. And I'm going to go ahead and make the image size. I'm going to go ahead and make the image size only like, let's say 50 pixels or so. Okay, so in there, so notice it just puts an image tag in there and puts the height. So now we have our logo. So we have our title and our logo. Now let's go ahead and do our menu. Now, again, we did a great series on this probably a couple months ago. It's a lot more definition, so I'm going to kind of mow through this pretty quickly. But what we can do is very much like the expanding menu, we have a menu definition builder built into the dashboard or into the control bar, excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into my menu definition. And we have two types, cascading and expanding. I'll show you both. Again, method for defining the menu. Now I'm going to use menu builder, but check this out. Static JSON or even better, XBasic function. So not only can I modify the menu for the main menu, I can literally update the profile menu. So let's say I'm an administrator, I could add 3 or 4 little menu items that a normal user can't use. Flexibility, huge benefit here. So let's go ahead and here. I'm going to add one. I'm going to call it settings, and the other one is going to be logout. Actually, profile, settings, and logout. So you'll see we essentially reuse the same concepts. So I'm going to go in there and do the icon for this. I like to use SVG because they're flexible. And I'll go down. I think it's, oh, you know what? Let's use that one. That one's kind of cool. Where was that? Ah, there it is. And you can play with it. It's really simple. So settings, we're going to go ahead and here and do a SVG. And we're going to do a gear. And remember, there's flat icons. So if you don't like our logos or SVG, you can go and find your own. And they're wonderful. There's some beautiful ones there. And then we have exit, which is our traditional exit logout kind of component here. So I don't have any on-click events, but I'll come back and talk about that a little bit later. So now I can change a whole bunch of other items. I can add a pointer icon, etc. I'm going to leave it be for right now. So I've defined my control bar items, but now I need to develop my layout. Where are they going to show up on my control bar? So the way we do that is we go over to control bar layout. And in a moment, it shows me my there. You'll notice we don't have any layouts. And I like to call mine default, sort of like the default layout. Although that may not be the best way because actually, you know what? I'm just going to use its name because then you can set as a default. So if you have 4 or 5 layouts, because you can switch them on the fly, you can set one as default. So when this first loads up, it always loads that first one. So we've created our layout, but now we got to create our line. So we add a line, and this tells us how things are set up. Now, very important, we're using the control bar as a horizontal structure, but a control bar could be also vertical. We could have actually used a control bar on the panel card PC menu. That's kind of a cool thing, and we may demonstrate that. Instead of using a fixed menu, I could actually literally use a control bar and have other capabilities in my main menu than just a simple expanding one. It's really up to you. It's really fun. So the reason I mentioned that is that you'll notice instead of saying left, middle, and right, it says before, middle, and after, because this could be vertical or horizontal. So I'm going to click add. First thing I'm going to do is put in my logo. And I also, right after the logo, I want to have my title. I'm not going to have anything in the middle. Over here, I'm going to add and put my button or my profile, my drop-down menu there. Now, if I don't like that, I can say, you know what, I really want the title to be in the middle. So you can kind of adjust things. And Alpha will take care of arranging things nicely so they look good in the control bar. So you don't have to sit there and spend a lot of time with, and this was before the control bar, you'd have to lay these things out as separate components and then set up alignment control panels. It was just a lot of work. Now, for whatever reason, I'm not sure this preview is always kind of messed up. So I usually just run it and see what it looks like. So it's time to kind of see where everything is going on there. So now we'll go into working preview, and the menu, I wonder if the image will show up. We'll see. Yeah, but notice now I have a more traditional tabbed UI, and I have actually a spelling error too I need to get fixed. You'll notice it is showing an image, but in working preview, it's not resolving to that. But I have my image here, I have my menu here, my content, and I have my button over here. Now it says button, but I want to change that because that really doesn't look like a profile menu to me. So I'm going to go ahead and change that in a moment. But you can see here are my menu items, and my menu items have the nice little icons. So right away over the tabbed UI, this is so much more flexible and it's easier to maintain. You go, you know what? I don't like it. I don't want this. Yeah, I like that there. So I'm going to go in here. First thing I'm going to do is fix my screw up. So I'll go my items, go to my title here and actually put in a good. That looks right. Then I want to go to my menu over here, and I want to show you, since I'm over there, I don't want the button to be like a text. I would like it to be an image. And then I'm going to go to my image here, icon, and I'm going to turn that into an image. So I'm just going to grab one of the images. And you know what? I could use like the hamburger menu, but I'm going to actually use a different menu item. Let's see, where is it? Yeah, I'm just going to go and use a person. So it looks a little more entertaining. Now, what I could also do, which is really cool, is I could, and you know what? Let me show you do that. Let's go ahead and do this and go HTML, and oh, this will demonstrate how to do that. So I'm going to add another HTML, and I'm going to say HTML username. And I'm going to go over here to data, and I'm going to go in the weeds a little bit, but I want to show you this. I'm going to go username, and I'm going to call it as John Doe. Okay. So what I did this is I went over to here to what's called the data. And what data is think of it as, data, variables that are associated with the control bar. The cool thing about this is that it's going to have an initial value that I'm setting it, but you can use XBasic, you can use JavaScript to update this on the fly. So for instance, when I load this bad boy in, I could on the fly say, you know what, I don't want to show John Doe, I want to say show Jane Doe or whatever it happens to be. So I'm going to go over here to my HTML username, and you'll notice I could normally put in, XYZ, but if I click HTML text here, notice my username is. So I can sit there and say user, and then put in username. So I can dynamically build HTML to be shown in the control bar, and I can update those at any time. Very cool and very flexible. So now that I have my new username, I got to go back to my layout, and I actually want to go here, and you'll notice it's showing my new icon down there. It's starting to look a little nicer here. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this line, and I'm going to put before my icon, I'm going to put that new username and go up. And so now you'll notice it says user John Doe and then has my menu after it. So if you've used the tabbed UI, you notice that when the person's logged in name is up in the right-hand corner, there's a login, log out link. This is our ability to use that technique there.
Hey, Dan, if you could
sure.
go back to that dialog just for a second, at the
Yep.
bottom where the preview is, there is a little box which says size on it. And I bet you if you crank that up, it's going to look a little bit.
Oh, okay. So you can do there you go.
Say,
Sweet.
here we go.
It's not showing the image, but I think it's just it's an image. So
Yep, it
cool. And
doesn't
then
know
we can
where it
actually
is.
select the slides there so you can kind of see it there. Oh,
Got
cool.
it.
Thanks. That's good. I've
Yeah.
always wondered about that. But notice it's putting in there user and actually, you know what? I don't like user. Let's say call it account. Sounds more interesting. But you'll notice this is all dynamic, so I can use any HTML. I could actually embed images here, anything you want to do. Very flexible from that. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I want to do another change, then we'll get to another piece to it. So you'll see now we have account John Doe, and we have this menu right here. I don't kind of like that menu. It's a little crunchy, so I can go back in, and you may like that. It's up to you. I'm going to go back to my items here. I'm going to go to this menu. And what I want to do is instead of cascading, I'm going to use expanding, and we'll go ahead and go and use expanding. I like it. It just seems to look a little nicer to me, but that's a personal preference. So now we go in here and everything, but now we have, I like that. It's just got, it's got the little highlighting and everything else. It's a little wide. So let's go back in here and we go back into the menu definition. And now I can say the menu width should be like, let's say 90 pixels. So you can tweak it. And I can give it a background color. So I could give it a different color. I could change the text. The sky's the limit. It's really fun. And this is where it gets interesting because you can really fine tune your interface very quickly to make it look exactly how you and your users want it to be. Okay. So now that looks much nicer. It's got the highlighting. It just has a presence to it. So that's why I tend to like to use that menu content there. Now, so we've got our control bar up here, and I can publish it and see this in a few moments, which we'll do in a minute. But what I want to do now is kind of talk really quickly about what we're going to do about the middle area. So I'm going to introduce it. I think we're going to run out of time for all the different things we want to do here, but let's go ahead and show it. And also I want to talk about a really cool new feature that's coming out that's going to be very powerful for people and people have been asked at. So you'll notice in here I put PC content. And so what I want to do is when I click one of those menu items, I want to load a piece of content there. So I'm just going to do something really quick. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a UX and I'm going to do it really fast. I'm just going to say controls, text box, populate list, connection string. Don't try this home. No, please try it at home. Table name customers. And I don't want all of them. I just want a few of them. What? Not doing that. Well, we'll take all of them. And oh, interesting. Did it not like? Let's try it again. There we go. So much for quick and dirty. Let me clean this out just so it's done there. And I often like to start with this because it's easy to kind of build a really fast structure. It's got everything kind of tied together. Click OK and OK. So notice it's giving me all the fields. It's also giving me all the buttons to do editing. It's also data binding this. It's pretty fun. So, and we'll save this as customer_UX. And I'm just going to say always allow. So I have this UX here, and I want to be able to open this UX and use it within my tabbed UI. So the first thing I'm going to do is I could go into my main menu. I could go into my Data Genie, go here and go to this decline click event and start defining my stuff here. But I tend to like to do the following. I go over here to JavaScript actions, and I'm going to add a new action. I'm going to call load customer UX. So I've kind of got my own terminology. You can come up with yours. Maybe you want to say customer UX_load. I mean, it's really up to you, but this is just the name of that. So I'll go customer_UX. Click OK. It's an empty thing, so I'm going to go in there. I'm going to go UX. So I'm going to open a UX component. I'm going a little fast, but I'm just using Action JavaScript. Open a UX component. I'm selecting that component I created. Now this is where it's important. I now can go over here to the target, and the target tells me where I want to open that in. So I'm going to open that up in a panel, and I'm going to open it up in my PC content. And I also have the ability to give it a working message. So I can say loading customer UX. So again, I'm using built-in action JavaScript. I am saying just take this customer UX and open it up into my area there. Now that I've got that done, I can go back into my menu. I can go to my menu data Genie, and I'll just go ahead and change this from function 1 to customer. And I'm going to go to the on-click event, and in here I can say insert the code to run that there. So now what it's going to do is when that button's click, it's going to go look for my action JavaScript and execute that action JavaScript. So click OK, click OK. So now let's check this out. So now I'm in my working preview, and I can go customer, and you'll see it loaded that UX with all the functionality of that UX right here. And it gave me that little message. So I can just click this and it loads that right away. It's really fast and snappy. It's if you can use cache components, it's really handy there. Now the cool thing is like, oh, you know what? Maybe this was my profile editor. I'm just going to use it for now. I can go to my top control bar. I can go to my menu definition here. I can go here, and let's say for profile, the on-click event is, and I have to scroll down a little bit here. I'm going to insert the code to run there. That's the power of having everything centralized, because now I can trigger it in many different ways. So let's go ahead and do this. We'll do a working preview. And for our working preview, I'm going to go here. I'm going to say, oh, I want to edit my profile. Boom. There's my content in there. And try and do that with a tab UI.
That's a good point. Hey, quick request from the audience. Would you mind previewing this in, say, a tablet? So in other words, tell the UX that it's mobile and do it on a bigger screen. Yep.
Yeah, cool. So I'm just going to do mobile here. Going to do my working preview. Actually, you know what? Yeah, we'll just do working preview. So not so great on a there. And we can talk about how that left-hand menu, you can actually show and hide it. But I'm going to go ahead and go to a iPad 4 horizontal. Looks really nice. Notice that it consumes the whole left space. It lays everything out nicely. And all of my functions are very tap friendly and they work really nice. I've noted, and that's one thing I've been doing a lot of experimenting. This works really well on a tablet. And there's two reasons why. One is that the screens on tablets are beautiful. They're just super high resolution. More importantly, the speed of these modern tablets, the iPads and stuff, is so insanely fast that the render time for JavaScript is like almost instantaneous. So when you tap around and do stuff, it's just like whap, whap, whap. Looks really good. And by the way, this is fixed, but I could expand this menu to make it a little taller if I wanted to. It basically sizes itself to the content that's in there at this point in time. Now, I want to cover one other quick topic, and then we'll discuss a new feature coming up, which we'll demonstrate soon, and then talk about our next one there. So you'll notice at this time that I'm loading, I have a panel card I'm loading content in it. So this is a monotasking kind of interface, which is not a bad thing. A lot of people are really moving to monotasking, meaning I'm doing one thing. I'm clicking on something and it's showing it here. If I do another action, let's say profile here, I do it here. So I'm only focusing on that one aspect at any one time. So the one thing in the tabbed UI had was a multi-tap pane. And for people who are in back office, that's pretty handy, but we can do the same thing here. And there's a really key feature of that coming up, which we'll talk about. So now I'm gonna go to PC content, and I'm gonna, instead of PC content, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this in a panel navigator, okay? So a panel layout is fixed, a panel navigator is not. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to take, and I'm gonna change the navigator type from carousel to what's called tab band. And what that does, the tab band mimics a tab UI structure. So you'll notice I already have one in here called PC content. And so that by default is going to show, but now I can have. So let's go ahead and just show you what this looks like here. And now we're getting much closer to what a tabbed UI is. So give it a moment here. So I'll go ahead and click customer. Now notice I've got a tab here. So I click customer, it loads it into this, but I've only got one tab. But this is where the magic starts occurring. I can now go back into, I'm going to go into my action JavaScript here, going to go in here, going to go to the UX component. And what I'm going to do is you'll notice that I'm loading my customer UX, but it currently is in target panel. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do dynamic panel. And then I'm going to go ahead and select that panel navigator I created there. And I'm going to call this customer. Okay, I can set FOSIC, user can close it. So let's go ahead and set that and other things along those lines. So I'm going to click OK. So all I did was instead of saying load up in this PC content, load it up as a new panel in this tab band here. So let's go ahead and do a working preview. Same concept here. I'm going to click customer and notice what happens. It opened up a new panel here. It left my previous one. So now I can tab back and forth. It's got a very smooth. And by the way, this is animated, but you can make it so it's just instantaneous. And I'll show you that in a moment. So the really cool thing about it is now I have a tabbed UI metaphor where I can have multiple. Now there is a current issue with this. Let's say I've got my customer loaded here and I want to do that again. Now let's say I had a list and each time I clicked an item in the list, I wanted a new tab. Well, it was very hard to do that right now. So in fact, watch what I do when I say profile. You'll notice that it really just reopens customer here. If it's closed and I do this, it'll open it up there. But if I try to redo it, it's doing it, but it's reopening it in the same location. There's a new feature in the pre-release, and this came from questions about this, that will allow you, when you generate this action JavaScript here, let's go back here. When you generate this, there is going to be some extra capabilities to on the fly set up a new dynamic panel title and also tell it to open in its own dynamic panel. So you can essentially tell it, instead of reusing the existing dynamic panel, and it just is out in the pre-release. I don't know if it's actually even made the pre-release. There's some testing going on that I have to double check, but it's in process because I just literally covered it. So that was one of the key questions people had, was like, I want to be able to have like a list of people, and then each time I click on that list, it's going to spawn a new panel card. And that was very difficult to do, almost impossible, because there was a lot of tricks you had to do. But now development is adding that feature into this open UX control, or the alternative will also have open a UX to edit the current record or list. You will have the ability to do two things. Tell it to make sure to open in a new panel, dynamic panel, because you got to give it a new name. And then also you can give it that title. So for instance, when you open the panel, instead of just saying customer, you can say John Doe, Jaden Doe, Philip, etc. And that's coming. It'll be out this week. And as soon as it's in there, I'm going to add that, and we'll come back and demonstrate how to do that. That was like the #1 thing people ever asked. And we appreciate it. We documented it. We got it to development. They put it together, and it'll be in your hands very, very soon. Now, one other thing, I wanted to show you two quick things, and we'll open up for questions. And then next week, we're going to go in and show you, and I'll give you a demo of what it does. So, but let me go ahead and show you this real quick. First, you'll notice that when we have this panel navigator, I can go in here and turn off the animation. So now what I can do is when I go into it, you'll see, and this may be preferred versus some kind of animated, you'll see it just, boom, it just opens it right there. So you don't have all this, well, I guess that's when you only have a single panel card versus this. But that is handy from that standpoint there. But what I'd like to do is go ahead and give you a preview next week of what we're going to show, which is there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go, and since it's using, again, I have web security on. I've configured security. I have a security database, users and groups, have some stuff here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn my development server on. I'm going to publish everything. So I've got all my stuff current. And then I want to show you how this works first. So I'll go to my A5W pages and I'll go ahead and publish the load work and open. So you'll notice I have a login page now. Got my Alpha Sports logo there. I'll go admin giant. click login. And now I'm in it. And this is my old style. I have to replace it, but now I'm in mine. So now I have my, you know, my menu here. I've got my other stuff. Again, this is using an old one for test here. But also notice what I'm going to do is I'm going to click log off, and boom, I'm logged off. Now, the way we would do this before is we would have like a A5W page with a login component and everything else. Well, the cool thing about it, and we'll go through this next time, is I can have a single component with a first login panel card called PC Login, has my image, my username, password. Then I have a second panel layout that has my tabbed UI, and I'll go ahead and integrate the one we did this week back into here. And what will happen is when I first launch this thing, I will only see the login until I log in. And once I log in, I'll be taken to the panel layout. I can then work there, and then when I log off. So now I can essentially have a single app or a single control that includes all my login. And what's nice is, if you'll notice, I can take control of my login experience and make it look a lot nicer than the built-in login component, which is fairly limited in styling. So we'll be covering that next time, along with, hopefully at that time, the pre-release will be out, and I'll be able to do a demonstration of how to dynamically spawn tabbed UI tabs, so we can really do that. And really at that point, we essentially have all the capabilities of the tabbed UI. And I highly recommend really going this direction, mainly as we mentioned before, because when you're using tablets, it's going to look good, it's going to be much more responsive, and you're going to find that you're going to have so much more control. We could data load these menus and control bars from databases and on-the-fly logic. It's just, oh, so much fun. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions on our segment there. Again, next week, we're going to do the first half. We're going to have our great crazy rugby demonstration. And then after that, no, we'll do the rugby one. I know.
There are some rugby fans I've noticed.
You know, the only reason I say
that
is
to object about the insanity portion of your comments there, but
well, and you do know the only reason I can say that is because I know they're on a different continent. I
fair enough.
I wouldn't have the guts to say that if he was
one
on
where travel is prohibited at the moment, so we're good.
He's like he's in a hazmat suit on a plane on his way over right now, and then we'll cover the other pieces that we're missing there. But let's go ahead and pop it open to the team and. Fun. Tabbed UI replacement. It's really cool and really enjoyable to work with.
Great. So the one question, and I think you're actually going to cover this next week, but on the profile that you had just set up, your logged in user was hard coded, right? So when you do your demo next time, can you have the logged in user, like the name of it, be John Doe or be the right name based on however they've logged in, whatever stored in that database.
Like their username. Actually,
exactly.
Great point.
Yep. Just want to make sure I can do that. Someone asked if they could get a copy of today's UI so they could play with it until next week. I think the answer is yes. What do you think? All right, excellent.
That's cool. I'll send you this. After we do the full thing, I'm going to send you the full project. So everything in there, all the settings and everything else, so you can have fun with it. But yeah, I'll send this over what we showed earlier today so you can get the ball rolling on our tabbed UI webinar. But then next week we'll have all the pieces in there, so you'll have all the little bits of codes. I'll include the sample database. It's an access database, so literally you can do it, modify the connection string, and be able to run it on your local machine.
Excellent.
In fact, we should put it up in Git. Have them be able to pull it down out of Git.
We need to do that. Start more and more.
Yes.
Yeah, we should probably have just an open directory for our webinar Wednesdays, which have got all the Git projects in them.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. So I can be posting that stuff up to the Git, and then they can pull it from there.
Yeah, good thinking. Okay, another tabbed UI question. Is there an easy way to close any open siblings when a new one is clicked on?
Yeah, I will have to look into that. Those are great questions. That's why we're doing this. The idea is
why it's a two-parter. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So one thing we're working on, just the other key thing is, let me go ahead and show this real quick again. One of the feature requests we have in there is that, oops, I don't want to do that one. I want to do this one. One of the key features we came up with, and it's again under analysis, is that when I open this up here, I want to be able to, on the fly, be able to change this. Now, when I open it, I want to change it, but once it's existing, I want to have an easy way to say, you know what, grab tab number 1 or 2, it's probably 0, 1, and change that from customer to customer, like a color or so that's one feature we're working on there.
Yeah.
The other item is like when I want to be able to, you were saying, is it on the menu or is it on the tabbed UI? On the, I'm sorry, the panel navigator.
I suspect they mean when you click in the navigator that it maybe closes the one that's open as opposed to stacking them. Oh, you
Gotcha.
did show how
Okay.
to do that at the beginning, yeah.
Yep. So panel navigator, close, panel. And then the other one was show logged in
Show
user
login
name.
user. Yep, show their name. And then also, as long as you're writing down requests for next
Yeah,
week.
very exciting. Da, da, da,
Oh,
da.
also, how about
I have my
setting session?
telegraph and I'm going dee, 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 dee.
How about showing how to set session variables when a user logs in, and maybe even contrast them to arguments, which is sometimes what we
Ah,
set when users log in as well. Yeah,
yeah, I got to tell you, man, arguments.
arguments over session variables.
Yeah, I mean,
In
I love
many
session
reasons, yeah,
variables, but
yeah.
yeah. But more and more, I'm just trying to use arguments for everything. Like grab the session variable when the UX launches, put it into an argument, and then I know I can then I can change the session variable for other reasons and not worry about breaking something.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Those are great questions. That's
Oh
what we
wait,
want.
there's more.
Well,
Wow.
wait,
Look
there's.
how quick I work. Oh yeah. Okay, hang on.
I wish
Is
I
there
was
a
on.
way that
I wish this was a webinar was billable hours. Then it would be like, yeah, what other features do you want? Come on, you know? Yeah, I
yeah,
can do
yeah.
anything, and it will take a long time. Please ask for more.
Sadly, it's not billable, but we'll let you
Nope, never. This is
double your
fun.
charges there.
We have so much fun doing this. Okay, the next.
So the next one, can you make it open a menu item automatically? Maybe under programming control or something like that, or I don't know, maybe
Menu
filled something in on
item.
one tab and you want it to pop open another tab, as to say, to
So
collect
wait,
more
so
info.
like for instance, I'm on here and I click a button and I want it to open another.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Or
okay.
maybe make it even smarter, like, do you have any, do you own a car? And if you checked yes, then maybe another tab comes up where you collect information about that car. I don't know, something like that.
Okay. So
Yeah.
open a new tab from one.
Programmatically. So whatever the case might be, it might be a button, that might be the easiest one to show, and then you could extrapolate from there.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Yeah,
Okay,
sounds fun.
and let's
These
see
are
what
great.
else we got.
Sounds like a lot of feature requests for
Oh
development.
yeah, it is. Oh, and also, can we make them look like file tabs, like file folders?
Ah, yes, styling of the
Yeah,
tabs.
there you go. So except for those 10, there are no questions for next week.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
see people are slacking off with this COVID-19 thing. Very disappointing. I'm disappointed.
Look at that. Well, if you do have any, we are coming to the end of our time. If you do have any
Yes.
other questions, not just about the Tab by UI, but anything about Alpha Anywhere, you can go ahead and send those to guides, GUIDES @alphasoftware.com, and we will be happy to get back to you. So that looks like it for questions for
Yes, thank you.
today.
Yeah, if you're interested, I will get, I'll, send a message to guides. We'll send that control out to you. We're going to set up next week, maybe a Git repository. So we can just say, this is where you go for all the stuff. We'll always post it there, make it simpler.
Yep.
And
That
excuse me,
sounds
last
great.
but not least is that if you're interested, keep an eye on the pre-release notes. When that does come out, you can maybe get a jump on things. Not enough to wait for me.
Perfect.
All
Thanks a
right.
lot, Dion.
Great
Hey,
job, everybody.
thank you for presenting. Thank you, everyone who showed
Stay
up today
safe.
and asked questions, especially those who actually suggested this whole topic in the first place, which I thought was terrific. So until next week, take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.